Hi everyone, and welcome to the Book Refuge. And today I'll be sharing with you my favorite fantasy tropes, as well as a recommendation kind of for each one that goes along with what I'm talking about in regards to this trope. I recently just made one about my favorite romance tropes, so make sure you go and check that out. Obviously, some of these can cross over, which is fun. That's what's great about books. There's not just one trope in deployment each time. So let's go ahead and get this kicked off with, I think, everyone's kind of favorite, at least that's what I hear, and that is a magic school. I started with this just because I picked a not so obvious one instead of the one we all, would expect, Harry Potter. And I actually picked The Summoner, which I've only read the first book in this series. I have the other ones, but this is actually about this school where you're trained to work with your demon, who is like a conduit for your magic. And there's all these different levels of these like demons, these familiars for you. And I remember loving this setup so much. And this kid like finds out that he has a connection with the demon, and then he gets sent to this school, and there's kind of like corruption happening in this school, and it kind of ends up being like two sides get formed, and it just gets super crazy. And I remember having such a fun time with it. I think, magic schools, assassin schools, any kind of thing where we have young people or maybe older people too getting trained to use some kind of magic is just so exciting, because it's our dream for all of us, right? Like, we want to get tapped on the shoulder and told that there is this secret world where we can learn all the magic that our hearts desire. And I think that is so exciting. And that's why it's one of my favorite tropes. Like, whenever I hear about a book that will have a magical school or has some kind of institution where we get to learn about magic or creatures or fantastical things, I get very excited about it. Next, I want to talk about the revenge trope in fantasy. This is kind of a staple, especially in any kind of fantasy where the state or the governing body or the kingdom has done us wrong. Maybe our parents have been killed, maybe our family has been killed, maybe we're being oppressed in a certain way, and we need to get revenge on them. And I picked Red Rising for this. I know a lot of people will put this in sci-fi, but there are some very strong fantasy elements in it. And I picked this one because I feel like Darrow goes so far for his revenge. And so much so that he has his body like manipulated and transformed into something else, into the thing that he hates the most, so that he can fight against these oppressors who would keep them at the bottom of the totem pole and kind of keep everybody else in line. And it usually ends up costing our hero everything, if not a part of his soul or his happiness to do this. And things can usually get pretty dark. But I think you'll find like this revenge trope in almost every great epic fantasy. There's going to be, some kind of that revenge in there somewhere. And it always gets me excited because our hero's always up against such huge odds, and seeing how they have to change as a person to overcome that, whether that means that like they are even like a chosen one in this situation or something like that, I find really intriguing. Next, I really, really love the secret heir trope, where either our hero or heroine doesn't even know that they're the secret heir, whether they know but they have to keep it hidden. I really, really love this trope. The example I use for this is Throne of Glass. I won't tell you who the secret heir is in case you don't know for some reason, but this is a case of, if anyone finds out, they would have killed this person when they were very young, and then there would never be any hope for the oppressed people or the, kingdom to be put back into rights. So I really, really love the secret heir trope. Someone who's lost everything and had to go into hiding, and they usually have, someone by their side who is trying to help them get their land back or their kingdom back. I really love when this is like a wise old wizard or like the wise guardian character who inevitably like dies at some point or something happens to them, you know, good stuff. But I just think there's something so exciting about the secrecy and about, you know, how they're going to overcome this and get back what is rightfully theirs. Next, the Reluctant Hero. And I actually used a couple examples for this one. I used Graceling by Kristin Cashore and then Onyx and Ivory by Mindee Arnett. These both have cases of reluctant heroes. In fact, Onyx and Ivory actually has 2 reluctant heroes. But in Graceling, we have Katza, who has been told her whole life that she is dangerous, that she's a killer, that the grace, which in this world is basically kind of like your superpower or your magic ability, which could be as simple as being a good swimmer or as powerful as Katza's, where she has a grace for killing people, or that's what she thinks it is anyway. And so she's been taught all her life that her job is to be the hand of the king and murder for him and kill for him. But that's not what her heart wants. But she doesn't expect to get the accolades for that. And she, in fact, is doing good undercover. Like, she doesn't want people to know that she's doing good because she's afraid of being found out and being stopped. But at the end of this story, it's her power that's able to save the whole world. And I really, really like that. In Onyx and Ivory, we're dealing with Kate, who has been labeled a traitor because her father tried to kill the king a couple years back. And so she's had to kind of go into exile and do menial work to try to get by and hope that people don't know who she is. And she used to be in love with the king's second son. And you know, obviously they couldn't really stay together once her dad tried to kill his dad. It didn't work that way. And they both are just up against terrible odds when there is these magical beasts who are slaughtering people in the night. And Kate has this certain gift that could help save everyone, but this gift is seen as feared and it's seen as an evil thing. And so she has to use it in a covert manner to try to save people without them knowing, because if they knew, then they would kill her and, you know, do bad things to her. But both her and her love interest, which I can't remember his name right now because my brain is yapping out on me, are both reluctant heroes in different ways. The second son, the prince, he is seen as an underdog in other aspects as well. And him and his brother, it's actually not, the next king isn't picked by birth order. It's picked by this competition that they have to do against each other to see who will be the true heir going forward. And they're both kind of reluctant heroes in this situation. So the last one I want to talk about, which is not just a trope in fantasy, but in, you know, tons of other genres as well, and that is the oppressed people group and like racism. Now, the reason I put this as a favorite trope is because I always love how fantasy writers can use this as a metaphor, like an oppressed people group or like someone who's being kept down on their luck as a metaphor for it happening in real life. And I always think it's fascinating because they can go to such greater extremes than we could if we told this in a contemporary setting, because it would just seem too extreme in that regard. But when you tell it in a fantasy setting, things can get really brutal and really crazy and just make us really look at how we treat people in our everyday lives. And an example of this is The Black Witch by Laurie Forrest, which is a book that I read at the end of 2018, actually. And I read the sequel in 2019. And the third book comes out this year, which I'm very excited for. And this is about a society that has very strong prejudices and is starting to basically slaughter the different creatures and different humanoid creatures. Like, you know, there's like werewolves and elves and Amazons and all these things. And the group that's in power, they are really oppressing those people to the point of starting to murder and kill and take the rights away of everyone else. And it's very scary, and I think that it's put on display in a very bold way. And this book, it has been criticized harshly for the way the main character handles things in the first book. But I love it so much because she has been very hidden away from all of this violence and, you know, from the truth basically about what her people are doing to all these other people groups. And it isn't until she goes to university, she goes to school and starts to see how unfair this racism and like xenophobia and all these things are, that she's able to change what she's been taught. And it isn't until she interacts with these people and gets to know them that she can change her mind. And I think it's amazing. I love it so much. And I just really wish people would give it the time and let the author, because a lot of people like didn't finish this book, but I think it says some amazing things. And the author knows what she was doing. And she makes the main character hateable until she's able to examine her beliefs and actually make her own decision and not just listen to the racism of her family and society and what they're telling her to feel about these people, and make her own decision and actually become a champion for others and help fight for them. And I think it's amazing. Like, that's who I want to be. So anyway, I hope you like my explanation of my favorite fantasy tropes. I make new videos every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and also whenever else I feel like it. If you like this video, it really helps me, and make sure you subscribe for more content. Thanks so much for watching, and have a wonderful day. Bye.